Hi, and thank you for joining us for a live Meet the Candidates event. I'm Jessica McAllister, the executive editor of the Center Daily Times. Pennsylvania's midterm election is just 3 weeks away, on November 8th. Center County voters will, of course, choose a new governor and U.S. senator, but county residents will see a number of other important races on the ballot, including U.S. congressmen and candidates for the State House of Representatives. We organized this event after learning of the cancellation of the League of Women Voters Candidates Night, a longstanding tradition that could not be held this year because of lack of participation from the Republican candidates. I want to express my gratitude to the League for hosting the event and for the many other services that they provide in our community, including the recent voters guide that we publish in our paper and on our website. We heard from a number of readers and community members after the cancellation of Candidates Night that they were eager to hear from candidates in a live setting. And so we invited all candidates looking to represent Center County in the State House and in the U.S. House of Representatives. Steve Yetzko, the Republican candidate for PA House 77, did not respond to our invitation. And as a point of clarification, especially those who registered early for this event, Justin Behrens was initially unable to attend, and we initially didn't have a response from Representative Carrie Benninghoff, but we're very glad to have them both joining us here this evening, along with Representative Scott Coughlin, Paul Takak, Robert Ziegler, U.S. Representative Glenn Thompson, and Michael Molisevich. And we're excited to hear from them all. Before we get going, just go over some logistics before we hear from our candidates. We'll be starting with 90-second opening statements from each, followed by questions for the candidates from the 15th Congressional District. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to the questions, followed by 90-second closing statements. We'll then move on to the State House candidates, where we'll follow the same format for 1 minute answers to questions and 90-second closing statements. I'd like to thank our readers and community members for submitting many of the questions that we'll ask tonight. And also wanted to point out that there are other ways to hear candidates' views, including the aforementioned voters guide, as well as CNET interviews that are available to watch now on cnet1.org. Those will also air next month on CNET Channel 7. CDT reporter Haley Kynes will be moderating this forum from here, and I'd like to turn it over to her now, and we'll hear opening statements from our candidates.
Thanks, Jess, and thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. We'll now invite each candidate to address viewers in a 90-second statement. We'll start with the 15th Congressional District race and with Michael Molisevich. Michael, you have 90 seconds.
All across central rural Pennsylvania, and quick thank you to the Center Daily Times for doing this. I would have liked to have done this in person, and I was willing to do it with the League of Women Voters, but this will do, and I'm glad to be here. This is great. It's an interesting format. I got into this race right at the primary as a write-in candidate because of the recent redistricting. And basically, we did not know where we were going to be with regards to a district. The main reason I got into this race at this time was to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And I think we need to hold others, elected officials and citizens, accountable when that does not occur. So we must remember that it is really all about the Constitution and upholding this Constitution, this sacred document. And when we take an oath, it's the first step that we do as elected officials, military personnel, law enforcement, and remember that we take an oath to the Constitution, not a political party and not any individual. So that is the main crux of my candidacy, in addition to giving the opportunity to all citizens for a better quality of life, security, and a key choice on many issues with regard to our election. Thank you.
We'll now turn to Representative Glenn Thompson, who is also running to represent the 15th Congressional District. Representative Thompson, you have 90 seconds.
Haley, thank you so much, and good evening, everybody. I'm Congressman Glenn G.T. Thompson, and I want to thank the Center Daily Times for hosting this forum and providing the viewers an opportunity to have their thoughts and their questions addressed. Now, I'm coming to you tonight from beautiful Indiana County this evening, just one of the 18 counties that will make up the sprawling 15th Congressional District. Now, I believe my duty as your elected voice and vote is to take your homegrown solutions to Washington. And I've had the honor and privilege of working to do just that by not only being an effective legislator, but by spending time with the small businesses, manufacturers, family farms, and the communities that make our portion of the Commonwealth so great. Together, we've had victories, whether modernizing career and technical education, providing better care for our veterans and service members through telehealth, or helping Pennsylvania's #1 industry, agriculture, continue to provide the food, the fiber, and the energy that keeps our country strong. Now, I've always been grounded by my faith, my family, and a sworn oath to uphold the Constitution. And tonight, I'm going to present you with a clear vision on how we can get the job done for the people in this community. Once again, thank you so much to the Center Daily Times for hosting this event.
We now will move to our State House candidates, starting with Representative Scott Conklin, who is running for PA House District 77. Representative Conklin, you have 90 seconds.
I want to thank the Center Daily Times. It's so important that the public has a chance to listen to those individuals that wish to represent them. See, this seat doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to the congressman or the senator or anybody else. It's your seat. And you have to be able to understand that we represent those individuals. One day I'll be gone and somebody else will be here. I'm very proud of my parents. My father had a mill truck, was a union carpenter. My mother scrubbed floors. And they taught us the most important lessons in life, that you have to be willing to work for everything you have. You have to be willing to give back to the community. But most of all, you have to have an understanding. And that's where my roots come from. It comes from the working people, those who can't afford a lobbyist or a corporation to pay for it. As a businessman, I'm still in business today. We still meet those payrolls. We still make sure that not only the people that work for us, but the community and everyone is part of our life. I was fortunate to be a 2-term county commissioner where I learned about government. I learned about the nuts and bolts before becoming a legislator. I'm proud of the work my staff does. I'm proud of the work we do for this community. But most of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for giving me and the individuals that work with me the opportunity to represent you in this fine, great district. Center County is probably the greatest place to live. Thank you.
Justin Behrens is running for PA House District 82. Justin, you have 90 seconds.
For allowing me the opportunity to speak to everyone. My name is Justin Behrens, and I've been knocking doors throughout this community. I'm a proud father of 2 children, and I'm married to a loving wife. I was born here in Pennsylvania and graduated high school in Pennsylvania. I had the privilege of serving this great nation in the Army over an Iraq war and in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. While serving, I was bounced around from place to place, like most families in the military. When returning, I finished my social work degree in Pennsylvania colleges. My family chose to move here in State College to raise my family. I've knocked over 8,000 doors to reach and talk to voters all over the 82nd. In today's world, politics tend to favor what they want you to hear, and I'm here tonight to tell you the truth about me. As you can see that I serve this nation, I worked helping those less fortunate become successful. People are struggling from the rising inflation, food prices, and rising heating bills. Pennsylvanians have struggled too far along and are looking for relief. Every Pennsylvanian wants 3 things: a roof over their head, food for their table, and provide for their families. I've been a public servant my whole life, and I will continue to do that for the 82nd. And I will listen, provide safety, and represent everyone in our district.
Paul Takak is also running for PA House District 82. Paul, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Haley. Hi, I'm Paul Takak, and I am running for the brand new 82nd District here in the heart of Center County. My wife and I moved here over 20 years ago, and we've made this our home. Our kids were born here and went to public schools here, and we've always tried to give back to the community, including my current service on College Township Council and as chair of both the Spring Creek Watershed Commission and the Center Region's Public Safety Committee. And until recently, I was in educational technology working with schools across Pennsylvania. Since this campaign began over a year and a half ago, I've spoken with thousands of friends and neighbors, and in those conversations, 3 key issues and concerns have emerged. The first is protecting abortion and reproductive rights. I am the pro-choice candidate in this race. The second is full and fair funding for public education at all levels. Every child deserves a high-quality public education, regardless of their zip code. And the third issue, or really a set of issues, can be summarized as more support for working people in our local communities. That includes everything from improving access and affordability of healthcare to helping folks who are struggling with inflation, higher fuel prices, and property taxes. I have the experience in education, business, and local government, and the deep roots in this community needed to help address these issues. I also have a proven ability to work across party lines to forge sustainable bipartisan solutions. And I'm truly excited about the opportunity to go to Harrisburg and get to work for the people and communities of the 82nd District.
We'll now hear from Representative Carrie Benninghoff, who is running to represent House District 171. Representative Benninghoff, you have 90 seconds.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having us here tonight. As the one candidate who is running as a candidate and also serving in office, we appreciate this opportunity. It's tough managing the time at periodically to be involved in these forums, but I'm glad to be here tonight. I have had the honor of serving our community in this district as it continues to change. Many of you know that I grew up here. I'm a father of 5 children and a proud grandfather of 8 grandchildren. So how our community is, how it develops, and the opportunities for them, as well as your own children, is very important to me. I've served our community in different capacities. I was the orderly at the hospital for many years. I served in a lab, eventually became a county coroner after serving as assistant coroner there. So taking care of people and healthcare has always been very important to me. And some of the things I saw as coroner is one of the reasons I decided to run for the state legislature, because sadly, as coroner, you deal with things at the end of the equation. I wanted to be able to produce things that would prevent some of these types of things and make our community stronger. And I think we've done that. I started a cancer caucus, try to better educate our members. We fought for good funding and better funding for public education, as well as our college here in Penn State. And we continue to try to invest more into vocational technical training as the workforce continues to change and as the demands for more technically trained people increases. At the end of the day, I look at my service, my tenure, and my ability to communicate with people. And I think the mere fact that I was honored by my own colleagues, 112 of them, who chose to put me in a leadership role, I think shows that I am willing to work with people. And at the end of the day, I'm not worried about getting credit. It's about getting things done to make our community stronger. We do live in a beautiful area, both Center County and the state of Pennsylvania. I want Pennsylvania to be enemy of the East. And we've been working on good tax policy, reducing regulations, trying to get government out of people's lives to the best of our ability, while still providing good services to the elderly, the veterans, agriculture, and other different types of communities that make Pennsylvania the great state that it is.
And we'll end the opening statements with Robert Ziegler, who is also running to represent House District 171. Robert, you have 90 seconds.
All right. So first of all, thank you everybody for having me on. I appreciate that. And thank you, Haley, for moderating. I'm Robert Ziegler. I live out in a little town called Millheim, where it's a big mix of different people. And, the reason I'm running is to help represent small rural municipalities. And I'm also a working class candidate. And I believe that Harrisburg doesn't have enough working class people in it. We have a few people that have taken it for granted. And with that, I want to bring in some fresh perspectives. And that's what I've done at the local level, too. I've been on local council for about 4 years. And during my time there, we've expanded, gotten broadband out here. Faster speeds in Penn State, where there's Amish buggies, about 2,000 households in the Penns Valley area. And it's because of my advocacy and pushing on the corporations to actually do their job and actually bring out services to people. I've also gotten us to do solar, which would save us some money. We actually cut taxes at the local level. We take care of our employees, pay them $15 an hour to start. Part-timers have sick time, vacation time. Full-timers have paid parental leave. Reason being is you support those who support you. They can't take care of the borough. They can't take care of themselves and their families. I am a working class candidate. I advocate for working people because it's the way it should be. And I've talked to tons of people. We've knocked over 15,000 doors in our district. We've made over 30,000 calls. So if you want to know who to talk to about what's going on in the district, I'm the guy. I yield my time.
Thank you all. Now we have some questions for Representative Thompson and Michael Molesevich in the 15th Congressional District. The two candidates will rotate between answering the question first. Representative Thompson, you'll answer the first question first. Several areas of the district are lacking access to high-speed broadband. What do you see as a potential solution, and what role does the federal government play? Representative Thompson, you have 60 seconds.
Haley, thank you. Making sure that we end the digital divide is a partnership, and the federal government has a significant role. I'm proud as the first member of Congress from either party to chair the House Agriculture Committee since the 1940s. I take that very seriously, and take that seriously for my constituents. Whether it's working with the Rural Utility Service with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the FCC, the NTIA, all these different agencies, the Appalachian Regional Development Corporation, where we provide funding for that partnership. Digital broadband, adequate broadband is no longer a luxury. It's an absolute necessity. We saw that during the pandemic. It's a great equalizer economically for our rural areas to equalize, economically with suburban and urban areas. And so it's something I work on and actually provide leadership on with the Agriculture Committee. We'll be reauthorizing the Farm Bill next year by the end of September. And the Rural Utility Service, which is an important part of USDA, is a part of that. And so bridging the digital divide and getting that fully complete is something I'm just dedicated and committed to.
Michael, you now have 60 seconds.
Thank you. One of the things we need to keep in mind is the infrastructure bill that was recently passed does include funding for this needed technology. And broadband is not the only technology that rural Pennsylvania needs, but we also have to consider and remember cell phone coverage. Two very different types of technology services, and cell phone coverage, when you probably have experienced that more because you're most likely going to notice that when you're driving, your calls can be dropped and or calls don't go through. So we need to support the legislation as bipartisan, and we haven't seen this from the other side, especially when it came to the infrastructure bill, with my opponent voting against that. So it's not only cell phone, it's infrastructure. I have a working relationship with some of the providers in our area, SCCV, and it's also interesting that the history of cable television, which is really one of the venues to use good digital and broadband, was founded in the coal region and the anthracite region around Mahanoy City and Mount Carmel. Thank you.
Michael, we'll start with you for this next question. Housing prices are high in the State College area. That, coupled with rising interest rates, makes it difficult for first-time buyers to find affordable housing. Margaret H. asked, how can the federal government help with high housing costs and affordable housing? Michael, you have 60 seconds.
One of the most important things to remember with regard to housing, the most energy efficient and the most environmentally sustainable house or building is one that we already have existing. One of the things as I drive around this area is noting vacant industrial buildings and commercial buildings, and now we've seen a string of shopping malls that are now underutilized or vacant. It does not make sense to build new when we have vacant buildings right down the street. So one of the things we need to focus on is reusing and repurposing existing buildings. And if we're going to be going through a shift with regard to market and fundamental uses such as shopping malls, they can be perhaps repurposed, as we have seen in our own Susquehanna Valley, with the shopping mall now becoming a medical center. And so that's something that we always need to do. Market conditions fluctuate. And we also need to remember that years ago, we had double-digit interest rates, and we got through that, and we could get through this by working together.
Representative Thompson, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. This is an issue that we've had certainly in Center County for some time in terms of affordable housing, especially if we saw the loss of some affordable housing that's gone by the wayside for development. I think there's a number of things there. First of all, certainly the federal government has a role. I've worked on that for well over a decade, to provide access, that partnership to really to construct and to build affordable housing, especially for folks who are significantly financially challenged. So people are just living and just getting by, hardly getting by paycheck to paycheck. I'd also have to say that one of the things that we should do to help that situation is take actions to bring down inflation. We're back to 41-year high inflation. We see the Fed interest rates are going up as a result of that, and that is quickly making housing and homes, the own a home, even more unaffordable. There are policies we can do in terms of energy and economically to be able to reverse that practice. We know that works because we saw that that's what worked back in, quite frankly, in the late 70s and early 80s. And then finally, just helping to equip people with financially to be able to afford owning a home. And that's something I take a lot of pride in as a leader in the United States on career and technical education. These are, I wrote the bill that was signed in 2018 into law, modernizing career and technical education. Those are great programs. We have them right in Center County. We have them in all 18 counties where people learn to earn, and they can graduate with a diploma in one hand and or a certificate or specialization in the other hand with 2 or 3 job offers. And these are good paying jobs without the debt that quite frankly, which is the cost of a home mortgage.
Representative Thompson, we will go to you first for this next question. We received a number of questions about the January 6th insurrection. This question from Craig R. sums it up well. What is each candidate's opinion of the January 6th attack on the Capitol, and how responsible do they believe former President Trump is for the attack? Representative Thompson, you have 60 seconds.
Well, the January 6th incident, and I was in the Capitol at the time, was one of the scariest situations I've witnessed. And I've been in at least 2 theaters of war in my lifetime. It was. And when I saw what happened to our brave men and women, the Capitol Police men and women, bruised, bleeding, being assisted, it was a terrible situation. I do think the facts are fairly clear on that a lot of that are 3 groups of really anti-government, anti-chaos. And I think obviously they came to Washington because they had an opportunity that they could abuse with what President Trump had done on the Mall that day. And I wish he wouldn't have done that and had that group. It was mostly law-abiding, peaceful people. Well, the people that came really were law-abiding. That just attended that rally that he had, and there's a lot of blame to be placed. I would put it largely on 3 anti-government, pro-chaos organizations that were just seeking to do harm. They were seeking to harm members of Congress, and quite frankly, it was really a dark day in the history of our country.
Michael, you have 60 seconds.
Well, sure, it was a very dark day, and we need to hold those who were responsible accountable for that day. And I think Liz Cheney said it very well. If we do not hold those accountable, then it will likely happen again. And we need to stand up to the big lie about the 2020 election. And if you see a wrong or see something an injustice, and you do nothing about it and sit quietly, you are part of the problem. You were condoning it. So we need to have courage as elected officials in order to call out elected leaders when they cross the line. And our former president obviously crossed the line, and we do not have enough of Republicans in order to stand up to that crossing the line. So we need to hold others accountable, and even other candidates now are, including our Republican candidate for governor, was at the insurrection. And we just need to make sure that someone like that is not elected.
Michael, we will start with you next. Reader Gorman F. said he is an American Cancer Society volunteer and caregiver to his wife, who is a 2-time colon cancer survivor. He wants to know if you will support legislation to provide all Americans access to health insurance, including those in the Medicaid coverage gap, and ensure greater affordability to the Affordable Care Act marketplace plans. Michael, you have 60 seconds.
We need to keep all options on the table to have affordable and accessible health care to everyone. That's it. I will support that, yes.
Representative Thompson, you have 60 seconds.
Well, I appreciate the question. Healthcare is extremely important. I practiced healthcare myself for 28 years before I decided to run for Congress. I came in dedicated to increasing the affordability, the access, and the quality of healthcare. I've actually accomplished that, and I'll grant it in small ways. As a leader on telemedicine, that has expanded access, broken down bureaucracy, but we have a lot of work that we need to do yet. I think the Medicaid program, I'll be honest with you, I think is underfunded. When I finished practicing healthcare, it was only paying 40 to 60 cents on a dollar. Medicare was only paying 80 to 90 cents on a dollar. That was driving up the cost of healthcare, making healthcare insurance inaccessible to some Americans. I'm a big supporter of federally qualified health centers. That provides healthcare based on a sliding scale on your ability to pay. And I was very proud to get an earmark or a community-directed support for the Volunteers in Medicine facility for their new facility that they've purchased and renovating, and another great organization that provides access to healthcare. So the point being is there are many ways to make sure that people have access to affordable, high quality healthcare services. And that's something I've dedicated my professional career to and continue to dedicate myself to when it comes to serving in Congress.
Representative Thompson, you will go first. In June, President Biden signed into law the first major gun safety legislation passed by Congress in decades. Do you see this as the first step toward increasing gun safety across the U.S., and what else needs to be done? Representative Thompson, you have 60 seconds.
I think that, quite frankly, gun safety happens through education. I'm admittedly a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. I don't believe that, I believe those laws need to be implemented. Criminals and quite frankly, individuals with certain mental health conditions are not allowed by law to own firearms where they're a danger to themselves, proven to be a danger to themselves or a danger to someone else. And certainly criminals, no matter how you might restrict a constitutional right, and whether you like the Second Amendment or not, it is a constitutional right, really punishes law-abiding citizens. It doesn't do anything to stop criminals from using backdoor methods to be able to obtain firearms. And it's not just when it comes to criminal activities, firearms are not the only tool of choice for a criminal. It's, as we've seen horrific scenes just on our television screen, cable news, where people were, these criminals using vehicles, clubs, knives. And so, no, I would not want to see a further erosion. I mean, public safety and security is incredibly important, but I would not want to see a further erosion of the constitutional right of the Second Amendment.
Michael, you have 60 seconds.
Well, we have not seen any constitutional erosion of the Second Amendment. We've seen a more of a proliferation of the power of military-style assault weapons. We had a ban on that years ago. That should be reconsidered. We need to strengthen and expand universal background checks. We need to strengthen and expand red flag legislation with regard to domestic violence. And one of the things that we never hear anyone talking about is the economic impact of these mass shootings and especially school shootings. Think about the economic effects on these communities, the hospitals, the school districts, everything, the EMS workers, the people who have to go in afterwards, the devastation that has occurred to these families. And there are massive profits being made on the sale of ammunition and weapons. And we need to start to look at what some progressive legislators have proposed is setting aside funds for community impacts of this violence, which would not affect your right to access or purchase a firearm.
This is our last question, and Michael, you will answer this one first. We received multiple questions about election results, and this will be a yes or no answer. Yes or no, if the Center County Board of Elections and the Pennsylvania Department of State confirms the results and certifies the election, will you accept the results? Michael, yes or no?
Yes.
Representative Thompson, yes or no?
Yes.
Great, thank you both so much. That concludes the questions for the congressional candidates. We will now give Representative Thompson and Michael a chance to offer their closing statements. Michael, you have 90 seconds.
Okay, great. One of the great things about this campaign is driving and learning about the congressional district and visiting places like Center County, Elk County, Cameron County. It's just been a great learning experience. And I will make it a point that when elected, I will uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and hold those who do not accountable for not upholding their oath. And I believe it's time to show some moderation, and we welcome the independents and the Republicans who are reasonable and rational and are having a hard time with accepting some of their party's leadership. And we are there, and we welcome you to vote with a quality team that I am a part of today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Representative Thompson, you also have 90 seconds for your closing statement.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks again to the Center Daily Times for hosting this evening. You know, we have certainly experienced a lot in the past few years with challenges arising, testing our supply chains, our workforce. You know, many of these challenges are self-inflicted wounds from an administration that has one-party control of Washington, with little oversight or checks against massive spending and overregulation. This has contributed to a 40-year record high inflation and soaring costs on everything from gasoline to groceries to consumer goods. Right now, I have, as a result of that, in Center County and across all 18 counties, there are families that are struggling, making a decision, can they afford to fill up their vehicle or go out and buy that special meal that they wanted to be able to purchase to prepare for their families. Families are challenged, budgets are tight, and as we teeter on a recession, it is paramount that we provide a check on the Biden White House during this next Congress. This is going to take the right temperament and experience. I have a proven track record of getting things done in Washington, and quite frankly, getting things done in a bipartisan way, working across the aisle, even during times of increased polarization. So on November 8th, I'm humbly seeking your support and your vote to represent the 15th District in Congress. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you both. Now we move to the Pennsylvania State House races. We have questions for Representative Scott Conklin in the 77th House District, Justin Behrens and Paul Takak in the 82nd House District, and Representative Carrie Benninghoff and Robert Ziegler in the 171st House District. We will switch up the order for each question, but for the first one, Representative Conklin will answer first, followed by Justin, Paul, Representative Benninghoff, and Robert. The first question is, school districts across Pennsylvania have reported pandemic learning losses. What needs to be done to ensure student success and to help districts as they continue to recover? Representative Conklin, you have 60 seconds.
My computer for the first half of the question. I do apologize. I apologize.
Sorry, let me repeat that for you. Sorry. School districts across Pennsylvania have reported pandemic learning losses. What needs to be done to ensure student success and to help districts as they continue to recover?
Thank you. Oh, when you talk to school teachers, they will tell you that many of the children, for instance, a 12-year-old was 12 when the pandemic started and they're 14 today. But because they weren't with the communication, because they weren't with their other students, they've lost 2 years of that learning ability. And it's tough. I mean, we can blame everybody on why it happened if you want, but at the end of the day, it's our job as legislators to make sure that it doesn't happen again. The biggest thing we can do is continue to give the funding they need, give the tools that they need, be understanding that there's certain curriculum that many of the students had missed out on. And we have to look at the testing levels to make sure that those individuals are proficient. And if they aren't proficient, we don't punish the school district or the teacher. We make sure that we're able to bring them to that proficiency. We look at how each classroom was operated. I mean, at the end of the day, many of us were a little concerned about closing down the schools for the whole time for that reason. So the biggest thing we can do as an elected official, rather than trying to point fingers, we can work bipartisan. We can make sure that we look at those shortfalls, bring them back in the light, and give those teachers the tools they need to make sure those students are proficient.
Paul, you have 60 seconds.
Hi, I thought it was going to Justin first. No problem. My career has been spent in education, and I am fully committed to full and fair funding for education. And the first thing is I would point out that there are available federal monies already in Harrisburg, title monies from the American Rescue Plan and others that are specifically addressed for learning loss. And we need to make sure that those are efficiently and equitably and fully distributed. And we also have to make sure that we are fully and fairly funding education all of the time. Pennsylvania has fallen behind after decades of low public support for education, and we rely far too much on local property taxes to pay for our local schools. We need to fix that broken system. It's a burden on local property owners and already struggling communities. And we need to take away, close loopholes like school choice, which actually siphons hard-earned taxpayer dollars out of the system. We need to make sure that every teacher and every student has all of the resources they need every year in order to provide the best public education we possibly can.
Thank you. Justin, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. I think it's important. As a father, I had two kids that went through this pandemic, and they had to learn through school at home, and they had to go through that online program. I think we're missing a big piece to this whole puzzle, and that's actually the mental health of these youth that are out there. I spent most of my life, 20 years, working in the mental health field, and I see the struggles that these kids are going to be facing. I think we need to really focus on how do we get that mental health? How do we get these kids back on track so that they can be helping and be successful? And that's what we need to do here in Pennsylvania. The other thing is that 40% of our budget here in the state of Pennsylvania goes towards education. We have a lot of dollars that are out there. We need to make sure that we spend it correctly and that we put it towards good use. I think that we need to make sure that we put values back to the parents and let the parents help make those decisions of those kids that are suffering. So I go back with my mental health field that we need to really make sure that we get our kids safe and that they are secure and that they're able to learn in this in school environment.
Representative Benninghoff, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. I'm actually proud to say that the state legislature has been very aggressive in providing a lot of funding towards education. While we got money in from the federal government through the pandemic relief, we actually spread it out through 3 different budgetary cycles. Some may not remember, but in the very beginning of the pandemic, one of the things that we did in a truncated budget, we pushed out our dollars to K through 12 education first and through higher education. We wanted families, not knowing where this pandemic may go and how far and long it may last, to have the security knowing, as well as the schools who have to provide the services, that funding would be there. And we drove it out. We did it quickly. And I think that was important and had some good success with that. In the last couple of years, we've continued to give more funding every year. Frankly, in the last decade, we've given more and more funding. And Justin's right. It's almost 40% of the entire state budget, which entitles billions and billions. I also think we need to be a little bit more in tune with what are the jobs in the future. Are we putting funding in the areas where the job demand is going to be? Through COVID, I think we learned a lot that job market's changing, demand, and people are working from home. Vocational technical training is a very important area. We have invested much greater in that in the last couple of budgetary cycles because we see more and more people going that route. There are great career opportunities for people who want to be a journeyman carpenter or welder, a lot of other hands-on services like that pay very good family-sustaining wages. Not everybody needs to go to a 4-year degree school or master's degree. And frankly, that's what made Pennsylvania strong, and we will need that. You know, they say for every engineer, you need 5 or 6 support staff in order to be building and maintaining the products that people make. So I think it's about having diversified investment across the Commonwealth, and we'll continue to do that.
Robert, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, I think the state has been failing the education system across the whole state. We're not doing enough to fund the schools properly. Now, yeah, it's a percentage of the budget, and I understand that. But, you know, maybe we should have cut these business taxes and actually have them fund the schools properly. And the schools are funded properly by the state. Maybe we wouldn't have property taxes so that everyday people and farmers would have trouble paying their bills. So with that, you know, if we properly fund things to begin with, at the local level would be a little bit easier for everyday people. And furthermore, you know, yes, we've been increasing the budget recently, and yes, it's because of federal dollars that Democrats pushed through and the GOP voted against. We've been helping everyday people with these things. And, you know, to the point, yes, we need mental health services in the schools. That's definitely vital because we've had trauma in the last couple of years because of COVID. And yes, we need to also focus on to helping out trade schools and help out culinary arts and those type of things as well, because it's not just about the 4-year degrees. So my opponent has some valid points there. I actually agree with him on some of that. But overall, it's a state needs to be responsible to help actually fund these local schools so we can get people through education effectively.
Robert, you will answer this one first, followed by Representative Benninghoff, Representative Conklin, Justin, and Paul. A more than $800 million State College Area Connector project is planned for Center County, which we received a few reader questions about. What is your position on the project, and what role can the state government play to provide a voice for the townships and communities who think this project will create unsafe conditions? Robert, you have 60 seconds.
Well, that's a pretty loaded question for 60 seconds, but that's okay. The PennDOT has been doing a lot of good work with getting a lot of information out and getting people to investigate it a lot. And, you know, in order to make progress and to address things, to make it set up for the future, we're going to have to make some changes. That's just the way it is. So what makes the least amount of impact for the local farms, the local families, on the environment, and everything else? They've been reducing options and got down to 3 options now. So the question is, up to the people, which is the best option out of those 3? It's already been set in motion. Part of it's already been built. And, you know, we're kind of stuck with that. So now what we have to go is, how can we make forward progress to make it effective with the least amount of impact to set up for future generations so we don't need to make another future impact on the local community? So my stance is, if the people decide on what the best option is and we go with it, then we've done the best of our abilities with that decision.
Representative Benninghoff, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. This is actually something I've been engaged with. So the first day I got sworn into office, I met with Secretary Maury, the Secretary of Transportation those days. And that was particularly part of the more south portion of that, the missing link. Sadly, I was there actually at the very last fatal accident we had there. Quality roads, safe roads have always been an issue of importance to me and to our community. As county coroner, unfortunately, I've seen probably the worst of what can happen in those situations. 322 is a corridor that runs south to north across our state and is responsible for transporting a lot of people as well as goods. We talk about wanting to grow our economy, and in order to do that, we got to be able to transport the goods, the products to make these goods, and get them in other places. You know, we really are the keystone passageway to the New England states. And therefore, I've always advocated having as many public meetings as possible on these things, a lot of public communications. I meet in my office on this issue probably at least several times a month. I've met in farmers' barns. At the end of the day, it's all about communication, trying to keep people up to date about why decisions are made, where paths have chosen. We've had multiple paths as far as all these three projects getting this corridor finalized. And the previous speaker was correct. We're only down the last 6-7 miles of it. It needs to be done. From a safety perspective, frankly, the longer we delay, the costs keep going up. The ultimate goal is to have less impact on people as possible. We pay market price for any property we take. And at the end of the day, we want to try to not impose any more on the environment than we have to, or farmlands.
Representative Conklin, you have 60 seconds.
This has been an ongoing project for as long as I've been elected. When I was fortunate to be the chairman of the board for county commissioners, we actually had a citizens advisory committee that was doing the routes themselves. And on the day that that route was going to be unveiled, they pulled the project. I'm hoping that PennDOT continues that outreach with the community. They look at the best lines to go through. Again, this project's long overdue. It should have been done many years ago. It should never have been pulled. Where the original road where they were going to put it 20 years ago is not the same location where it's going to be today. But I'm proud of the work myself and my other colleagues have done over the years with preserving as much farmland as we can. And with PennDOT moving forward, again, let's go back to what's been talked about. Let's put the citizens involved, and let's just not do an unveiling, but show them the routes more in depth. So each detail has gone over, so it's very palatable to the public.
Justin, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. I think the biggest issue here is transparency. And as long as we talk to the players at stake and discuss what's going on, I think it's the most important. We need to protect our farms and protect our residents, ensuring that their living areas are not affected as much. We also need to make sure that safety is involved. The biggest piece is making sure that this road that we develop is safe, secure, and that we protect the people that drive on that road. But going back to what I originally stated, the most important piece is that we have transparency. Let the public talk. Don't surprise them. Don't give them, backdoor deals. Don't give them around the corners. Let's talk among each other and discuss what's the best answer to make this happen.
And Paul, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. This is a topic that I've been very heavily involved with, both as a College Township council person, as well as the chair of the Public Safety Committee for the Center Region Council of Governments. That is a very dangerous stretch of road between Boalsburg and Potter's Mills. It's a single lane, both directions. It's very difficult for EMS and others to deal with. There's sensitive homes and wetlands and everything along the way. I do believe that we need to do something about improving safety on that road. But the three proposals that have been advanced so far do have very significant impacts on not only farmland, but the homes and the wetlands and some of the environmental impacts along each of those three corridors. Just today, I received a letter an open letter from the Harris Township Board of Supervisors, which suggested that PennDOT reconsider the design of the highway. They actually would suggest rather than a limited access highway, which we trying to connect the two, maybe to look at something like a 4-lane divided highway or something, so that we would be minimizing the impact to the local environment and the local community and our landowners, and really just improve the safety. So I think it's an ongoing conversation, and I would urge PennDOT and the local community to stay involved in this discussion.
For this next question, Justin, you will go first, followed by Paul, Representative Benninghoff, Robert, and Representative Conklin. Penn State trustees recently approved a $469.5 million state appropriation request, which includes a nearly 50% general support increase for the next fiscal year. Would you support such a request? Why or why not? And what else can the state do to support higher education, as it currently ranks 47th in the US for per capita appropriations? Justin, you have 60 seconds.
Let me start off with this. Penn State, we have the greatest, in my district, we have the greatest university, hands down, in our country. And we need to make sure that we look for funding for this school. In the same breath, we need to start funding in areas that might help not only the 82nd District, but also the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and this nation. We are a great research university, and I'm all for funding the research to increase notoriety to the university, along with advancing the technology and advancing degrees in Penn State. I also look at that we also need to help support our youth getting through there to make sure that they get the best education. And what that means is that we need to make sure that they have the right resources, the right materials, along with that, the right programs that they need. And so I think that we need to go back to our roots. Penn State was a great agricultural university, and we need to start supporting the agricultural. We're losing our agricultural all across this nation. And what better place to put that funding than in Penn State, than bring back the roots and show what Penn State was all about.
Paul, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. One of the really exciting things about the 82nd District is that for the first time, the Penn State University Park campus is part of the same district. And I've been spending a lot of time there talking to administrators and talking to students. They're a very important constituency that we have. And many of them are they're struggling. They're struggling with soaring tuition costs, student debt issues. And it's really a result of stagnant state support over decades, quite frankly. And as a result, Penn State is one of the most expensive schools in the Big Ten, certainly, and nationally, even for low and middle income students. We have to fix the problem at the source. And I do think that this appropriation level is correct. It does make sense. And, again, if we really believe that the university is a value and higher education is a value, we need to make those investments. And I believe it's far past time. But back to the other point earlier, it isn't just about college and university. It's about workforce development. It's about the PASHE system. It's about community college. It's about workforce training. We have to look comprehensively at post-secondary investments to help grow our economy and help working families and help our communities get ahead.
Representative Benninghoff, you will be answering this question next, but I know we had some difficulties with technology on some of the candidates' end, so I'm going to repeat the question. Penn State trustees recently approved a $469.5 million state appropriation request, which includes a nearly 50% general support increase for the next fiscal year. Would you support such a request? Why or why not? And what else can the state do to support higher education, as it currently ranks 47th in the US for per capita appropriations? Representative Benninghoff, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. Obviously, Penn State University has a great impact on our area. A lot of our family and friends are employed there. That's a pretty hefty increase. If you remember, in this year's budget, we did give a 5% increase. Penn State also, and some of the other state relateds, then increased their own tuition costs another 5%. at the end of the day, I think it's about competition and whether or not customers want to pay that kind of money to go to school. At the end of the day, I hear many candidates sitting there say the state just needs to give more money. Well, at the end of the day, whose money is that? That's taxpayers' money. It's the same people think we should give more money to townships, to schools, College of Higher Education. It's not that simple because we have a limited amount of resources as well, and we try to be good stewards of that money. Taxpayers are paying for every service that they get out of any level of government. While I think this is a good investment, I'd have to hear a little bit more about why would need a 40 to 50% increase. That's significant. I don't know of anyone else that's come before the legislature asking for that significant amount of money. And to earlier comments, 40% of our budget goes into education. Another 40% goes in human services. Almost 9 to 10% goes into correction. We really only have flexibility of about 10% of our rural state budget to be able to manipulate and use in other areas.
Robert, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, the answer is yes. You invest in education more. And the reason being is Penn State's the largest employer of Center County, the fourth largest employer in the entire state. So if you invest more money into that, you're going to have people with more jobs. That's just the way it is. And they're able to invest more, which pumps more money into the economy. And you're pumping more money in the economy. That means you have people with more wages, which means they get more income taxes back, which means that other businesses excel as well. You're having just pure economic growth, which means the state would get the revenue back if it's done correctly. Now, there does need to be accountability with this money, and there needs to be transparency with how it's spent. I fully agree with having full transparency on that with the money going to Penn State. So with that being said, it's one of the biggest investments you can make. There's two investments that a state can do well that invests in the society: invest in infrastructure and invest in education. And the rates of return for economic growth are proven to be higher over and over in terms of rates of return than any other investments. So hands down, you put more money into it.
Representative Conklin, you have 60 seconds.
This is where you think of a different way to answer the same question again. When you look at Penn State, per student, they get less money than any of the other state-related universities. When you look at every study that's been done, every dollar we give to Penn State comes back to us 2 to 5 times full. It's a great investment. I mean, money we give to corporations does not give us that type of return. There would not be those shops on Beaver in College. There would not be the mini malls. There would not be the research center. There wouldn't be the CBICC. None of that would be here if it wasn't for Penn State. It's a great investment for the community. It's a great investment for Pennsylvania. But most of all, we always have to remember that money we're giving to Penn State goes to the student. It's not going anywhere else. It goes to those students. We have to continue to do that. And it's a very, very good investment. It employs a lot of individuals, and the return throughout the private business, the private market, is unquestionably not like any other investment we do in the state.
Representative Conklin, you will answer this next question first, followed by Justin, Paul, Robert, Representative Benninghoff. Numerous readers sent in questions regarding abortion access. Luis R. asked, what is your position on abortion? If you are anti-abortion, should there be exceptions for rape, incest, and to save the mother's life? Representative Conklin, you have 60 seconds.
That's an easy question. When you look at the 14th Amendment, what the United States Supreme Court wrote, it goes even beyond abortion rights. The United States Supreme Court says you have no right to personal privacy, period. That's what they said. It's absolutely ludicrous. I believe that government has its role. I believe we should be help educating our children. I believe we should do that. But when it comes to your personal freedom, I don't want to be between you and a doctor. Listen to folks. They skirt around this. We have 10-year-olds from Ohio going to Indiana, and they're arresting the doctor because a 10-year-old was raped. That's where this country is today. I don't believe I or anybody else should tell you and your doctor what's best for you. It's up to you to decide. If you have religious objections, you should not have it. If for other reasons, you should not have it. But if for the reasons that you are doing it, it should be between you and the doctor. Keep government out of your life. We don't want government telling us what to do, what to wear, how to live, or where to go. So that's my answer to it, straight and simple.
Justin, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. There's been commercials out there about me calling me an extremist. But what I am is pro-life, with exceptions of the life of mother, rape, and incest. But I think we have to look further than that. I think we need to start looking at how we can put funding towards programs that will help men and women make good decisions. I think we also need to help put funding towards adoptions so that we can have the help out the adoption agencies and put money towards the broken mental health system that we have out there. I believe that's where we need to start to begin.
Paul, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. I want to be perfectly clear. I am the pro-choice candidate in this race. Like millions across the Commonwealth and our country, I was deeply alarmed and troubled by the Dobbs decision in June, which ended the federal protection for a woman's right to choose. That decision opened the door for states to make their own laws concerning abortion. And we've seen some states abolish legal abortion, even in the cases of rape, incest, or when the life and health of the mother is at risk. I'm determined to not let that happen in Pennsylvania. From the moment I am sworn into office, I will tirelessly fight to protect a woman's right to choose and stand firmly against any measure that seeks to curtail that fundamental right. I'm a firm believer that the right to privacy, and therefore I hold the deep conviction that those decisions should be made by a woman in consultation with healthcare professionals, not by judges and politicians in Harrisburg or in Washington.
Robert, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. Yes, I'm pro-choice, and I'm a strong advocate for reproductive rights. And I really think it's not even the government's role to be even involved in that process, especially when most of the legislature is made up of men. Really don't know what the deal is with that, and they really don't have a good voice in that. Furthermore, I don't think we should be using constitutional amendments to try to restrict the rights regarding that decision, especially when it's not really put in the hands of the people, and they usually push those constitutional amendments during the primaries in odd years when the turnout's the lowest. If you really want to do constitutional amendments and have some political courage, you would have it so that it would go in the general election during the presidential election, have the constitutional amendment come out then. Then you know what the will of the people really was. And they probably put a constitutional amendment to protect that right to abortion. So that's where I stand on it. I think we should codify it or make constitutional amendment to protect the right to have an abortion.
Representative Benninghoff, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. There's been a lot of confusion and a lot of political bannering on this issue. Basically, the court said that states would have to handle this should they want to make any change. But I want to be very clear. Pennsylvania's Abortion Control Act has not changed. Nothing has changed. Those protections are in line, and I support that. While it's no secret that I am pro-life, proud father of 5 children, and adore my 8 grandchildren, I do believe that a lot of these decisions are sometimes clouded by the political arena. And I think it's important people understand that our law is in place. That has not changed. I also support trying to find alternatives. Many people that I know that want to adopt children end up having to spend an awful lot of money, adopt children out of Pennsylvania and oftentimes out of this country. As one of 4 adopted children, obviously I want to give those children an opportunity to give them life, just like my mother did. And as I remind my own children, my mother's decision to give me birth led to their 5 lives and subsequently the other 8. It's a shame that this issue is so polarizing and that people sometimes do not articulate the truth about it and try to make political points. At the end of the day, these are very personal, difficult decisions. But as a father of 4 daughters, I am very sympathetic and empathetic to this issue.
Representative Benninghoff, you'll start, followed by Robert, Paul, Justin, and Representative Conklin. Pennsylvania is one of 20 states that has not raised the 12-year-old federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Do you support an increase in minimum wage? And if so, what would that look like? Representative Benninghoff, you have 60 seconds.
Frankly, I think COVID already did that. I don't know a place around that pays $7.50 an hour. Most places I see advertising, first of all, there's probably a greater demand for jobs and opportunity for people looking for a job out there than ever before. Most places are advertising $15 an hour, $17, $20 an hour, whether it's Target, Walmart, Rudders, or whatever else. I think it's great political talking points for some people to keep bannering this issue around, but I'm yet to see anyone who's now making those types of wages. Like you and many of others, I want to see people be able to earn as much money as possible. Government mandating a particular number doesn't necessarily make that better. It forces employers to have to make decisions about how many people that they hire if they are mandated to pay a certain wage. But at the end of the day, I think we're fooling ourselves to think that the old political rhetoric of $7.50 an hour is in place anymore. It is a job hunter's market out there. If people want a job, there's many, many jobs out there. One of the greatest challenges facing Pennsylvania and the country is a lack of a workforce. Many people retired early. Some people went into other types of employment. And frankly, our birth rates are decreased over the last 50 years significantly, 50 to 60,000 people. And therefore, we're actually lacking more workers than what we have opportunities for.
Robert, you have 60 seconds.
So once again, it's just a simple thing of economics. Actually, the Nobel Prize for Economics proved that raising minimum wage does help with, one, reducing unemployment, and two, it doesn't cause inflation, as a lot of people do like to push that narrative, and it's a false narrative. In the Millheim Borough, we made our minimum wage $15 for our employees. We don't have employee turnover other than actual retirement. And it's been easy to recruit that. In the rural areas, if you go in those areas, there are some places that pay only $8 or $9 an hour, but they can afford to pay more. And if more people made more money, it bumps up the wages for other people that are making more than that, which means they can spend more money in the economy, which therefore helps push economic growth, which also increases tax revenues, which can help go to infrastructure and education. So saying that we can't do something is the most un-American thing I've ever heard. We sure as hell can raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and it works out. It worked in Seattle. It worked everywhere that has been done.
Paul, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. I have experience. I worked, as I said, a minimum wage job, putting myself through school, but I didn't have to support a family. I wasn't supporting myself, fully using with a minimum wage that hasn't increased in decades. People are suffering. People are really hurting due to the inflation and gas prices and everything else. It's a simple economics. Can I afford to work? That is broken. I was actually standing in a man's kitchen yesterday, and he was telling me that he's retired and he can only afford to do the job that he's doing because he has another income. We have to fix this. We need to build an economy that works for everyone, not just those at the top. And I'll take an exception to something that Representative Benninghoff said. Local businesses are suffering because large big box stores and other corporate interests are taking advantage of the minimum wage. And we're actually supplementing. I have talked to dozens of people who make minimum wage and are on public assistance. That is wrong. These are people who are working hard. They're trying to support themselves. They're doing what's right. We need to support them.
Justin, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. So minimum wage, I agree with Representative Benninghoff. When we look around, I see stores that already have $15 an hour, $16 an hour. But we're missing one piece here. By raising minimum wage, let's talk about the nonprofit sector. The nonprofits spend most of their time taking care of their vulnerable populations, taking those with mental health, taking those that have drug addiction, and do great works trying to transform the most vulnerable and get them back into society and being productive. By raising a minimum wage, and I can speak from my business that I have running with Keystone Mission, in that if we raise minimum wage, I would not be able to pay my staff to get to where they need to go so that we can help those that are hurting. So we're okay with shutting down the nonprofit sector by doing that. We need to look to say, hey, how can we do this to build the infrastructure? Well, also, what the whole thing is, when we raise minimum wage, it's going to be passed on to the consumer. And so we need to make sure that the business drives the direction of raising those rates. And we're seeing that all across the spectrum, with employment everywhere, with people wanting to get jobs, people having good paying jobs. So I say it's already out there and it's already doing what it needs to do.
Representative Conklin, you have 60 seconds.
I tell my colleagues a lot of times when we talk about this, I say, If everyone's paying them, what's the big deal? Just make it $15 an hour. It's already done. It's not going to hurt anyone. But at the end of the day, there's been a couple of good points brought up, and one of them were strictly based on facts. That when you look at some of the largest corporations in the world paying below livable wages, we're actually subsidizing them. So the taxpayers are paying for the extras that they can't afford. That when you look at individuals working, it's only a decency to pay them a wage that they feel like they're being rewarded for working. So at the end of the day, if we're really talking about it, we'll all agree that almost all employers are paying above that now. So the impact won't even be there. So let's just do it. Let's make it the $15 an hour wage, and let's make our workers feel as though they're being paid a decent wage when they start to work.
For our last question, Justin will answer first, followed by Paul, Representative Conklin, Robert, and Representative Benninghoff. This is a question that was sent to us by a few readers, including Julie M. What is your position regarding changes to procedural rules to ensure that bills with bipartisan support receive a vote in committee and both chamber floors? Will you commit to voting no on rules of procedure that don't embody these reforms? Justin, you have 60 seconds.
I think it's important. One thing that my skill as a social worker out there is that I learned to work with everyone. We learned that everyone has different ideas, everyone has different views, and we really need to work to make sure that we do what's best for the people of the 82nd District in the state of Pennsylvania. I've always worked across aisles. I've talked to multiple different individuals when it comes to that. We need to work. I think the biggest piece missing here in today's realm of politics or realm of government is that we've lost civility. We've lost that respect that goes on across the aisles. I remember when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill may be on different spectrums, but at the end of the day, they worked together, which was best for the good of the people. And that's what I will continue to do, is work for the good of the people.
Paul, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. The fact that good legislation can't even come up for a vote just shows how broken our partisan and personal politics are in Harrisburg. This is symptomatic of that. It's a result of gerrymandering. It's a result of extremism. And quite frankly, it's a result of money, corporate and special interest money flooding into our politics, and it allows them to avoid even good legislation coming up for a vote. We have to fix this. Essentially, in each committee, it's 15 to 10. You need to be able to flip multiple people from the other side, even to get a bill to advance out of committee so that it can be debated and discussed and voted for on the floor. That is a broken system. We have to fix that.
Representative Conklin, you have 60 seconds.
I often jokingly say some of the best legislation I ever passed was in somebody else's name. Being in the minority party is not any way you want to be. Let's understand how the system works. The majority party controls the legislation. The majority leader controls the bills that are put on the floor. If you're in the minority right now, you have almost slim to no chance. I can come up with a handful of bills that have been passed by my colleagues on my side of the aisle. Any bill I've been able to get through, I've had to put one of my colleagues' names first to be able to get it across. I think it's a disservice. I think it's time that we look at each one of us. We each represent the same amount of people. We each have good ideas. So the only chance most times somebody like myself has to get something passed is that you make a really good piece of legislation. You hope somebody steals it to put their name on it so you can get it passed. Other than that, it becomes very, very difficult. I think the rules need changed. There are a lot of things on the roll. I mean, right now we have a rule that you can go over an amendment for the day, which means it's killed. We use rules are out of order. I mean, there's so many things that need to be fixed to give everybody a voice rather than just one party rule. And even if the Democrats were in control, I'd say the same thing.
Robert, you have 60 seconds.
So, that's a good question. And the thing is, it does need to be reformed. If there's a bill that's unanimous, that's in let's say, the state committee, for example, such as Bill 583, which is, a bill that was used to, basically hold pay increases for 2022 and legislators to make it so there was a pay freeze. That never came up to the floor at all for a vote when it had unanimous support from both parties in the committee. And so, some people benefit from almost a $10,000 pay raise. You also have like Bill 1009, which is a gift ban bill, in order to, unanimous support, once again, the state committee, not brought up for a vote. So, some people can get trips to a rodeo, all expense paid trip. It's just one of those things where it just doesn't really make sense. If you have these bills in place that have unanimous support from the committee members, they should at least come up for a vote so you can know what the record is for the people that are supposed to be representing you. I can tell you with the gift ban, yeah, you got about like 85% of the population that supports that. And it's the same with a lot of these bills. The rules do need to be changed and they need to be modified. And the power shouldn't be resting in somebody who chooses to do nothing.
Representative Benninghoff, you have 60 seconds.
First of all, I think people need to understand, those that are not involved, that every member has the opportunity to draft a rule change that we all vote on the beginning of session. So to try to blame on any one particular party or person is just political pandering. At the end of the day, we get about 4,000 bills introduced to become law. Many members, if they're honest with you, sign on to bills as a co-sponsor, not necessarily because they support the bill. Some of them sign on to them just because they want to tell somebody they did. But at the end of the day, it is up to the chairman in the process to look at those bills and decide which ones will come through, which ones are following the agenda of what we're trying to do in the state. And more importantly, and sadly, there are some bills that are very poorly written. They just do not pass the legislative muster. They would be found ungermane or be vetoed because of being poorly written. So there's a multitude of reasons why bills don't run. Not to mention, there's also companion bills of many pieces of legislation in the sister chamber. And sometimes it is decided that particular bill will be run in the Senate rather than the House version. Just think about it. In a 2-year session, 4,000 bills are run. We run every single bill. We'll have more laws regulating every aspect of your life, every moment that you're awake. It is a weeding process. It is a process of sifting through and trying to allow the good legislation to rise to the top. And good is not necessarily the converse of bad. It's just about what is going to make Pennsylvania better. Some bill proposals are introduced to repeal an old law. Some are introduced to make an old law better. And some are just a standalone bill. So people need to understand the overall structure of how legislation works. It's easy to stand on the outside and throw stones and tell people that, particular people are blocking those, but you need to understand the overall process. The legislative process was not designed to happen overnight. That deliberative legislative debate and committee work is what makes a better quality bill and ultimately a bill that can be passed. And last thing I'd say to that, if you look, the majority of bills that get passed in the House of Representatives, the large percentage of them, probably almost 80% of them, are all passed in a bipartisan manner.
We will now give each candidate a chance to offer their closing statements, with Robert starting, followed by Representative Benninghoff, Paul, Justin Behrens, and Representative Conklin. Robert, you have 90 seconds.
Well, to all the people watching, first of all, thank you for listening to all of us talk. I really appreciate the time that everyone's taking here out of their night. Secondly, I think I've made it pretty clear I'm rather direct with people. And this is how I am with door knocking, phone calls, and every manner in which I am just interacting with people. You much rather have somebody who's direct with you and is not going to be flip-flopping on different issues or trying to pander to anybody. So with that, my record locally has been pretty good. I'm a strong advocate for my community. I always have been. And, if there's something that's false narrative, I push against it because that's the way it should be. My job as a public servant is to provide the facts and to advocate for the people as a whole, not a party, not corporations that happen to pay my campaign coffers. None of that. It's just for the people. So with that being said, I think my record's pretty clear. I think you guys know where I'm at with a lot of things. I've been pretty direct about it. And I appreciate all the time and hope that I can work with all of you to help build for a better tomorrow, whether it's through servant leadership or by putting people first. We can all build for a better tomorrow together. So with that, thank you very much again. And shameless plug, go to my website, zieglerforpa.com. Thank you.
Representative Benninghoff, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, and thank you to the CDT for providing this platform. It is not as easy when you are the candidate and the office holder to try to get around to everybody and meet and greet. I do my best to try to do that, as well as provide good constituent service. There's a lot of political rhetoric gets thrown around. I just like to say that I stand on my record. I work very, very hard. First time I ran, I said that I'm not making political promises, as some people do to try to get into office, and it's easy to do that as a challenger. But I like to think the fact that I have been fortunate enough to be elected several times, that's an endorsement of service that I try to give to people and my staff. I would be remiss not to say what a great, wonderful job they do. I don't have a lot of people in the office, but the two that are there do a great job. That said, I would tell you one of my best compliments in I consider successes as a legislator is several retiring Democrat members in the last several years, upon their retirement speech, has complimented me on my willingness to be a good listener, to try to work together and reach across the aisle when I can, and to try to help them with some of their issues. I take that as an endorsement that we try to be fair. Do I agree with everything that they may do? No. Do they agree with me? Nope. But that's what the melting pot of the General Assembly is about. I take it very serious. I work very, very hard, put a lot of time into it, and I don't take anything for granted. I love our county. I love the 171st District, of which I know very well, serving in it for a while, both here in Mifflin County. A lot of good, hard-working families, hard-working people. I watched my own father get laid off twice and end up working until he's 85 because he enjoyed work, knew the importance of it, and loved helping other people. I've been lucky. I've been adopted by great parents, good mentors, and my goal is to try to be a good mentor to my own children, kids that I've coached, and friends and family that I work around, and to the constituents serve. Thank you very much for that opportunity, and I'd be most honored and humbled to be reelected.
Paul, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Haley. I know times are tough right now. I mean, I can hear it in people's voices when I talk to them. I see it in their faces when they answer their door. It's hard stretching a paycheck to cover the cost of food and gas, medical expenses, and childcare. I understand this, and I know what it's like to struggle. My own story is one of overcoming pretty daunting challenges. My mom passed away when I was 10, and my dad struggled with addiction. But my family and I didn't overcome those challenges alone. We benefited from a union pension that kept a roof over our head and food on the table. I had access to excellent public schools that helped pave a path for me to go to college. And once I got there, I worked a minimum wage job to get me through. And so with a little luck and a lot of hard work, I went on to have a successful business career. I believe this is the foundation of my candidacy to be your state representative. I'm running to make sure that everyone in this district has the same opportunities I did. And while I'm certainly a strong believer in investing in education, I'm an advocate for investments across our communities. I want to invest more in our infrastructure to make sure Center County is competitive. I want to ensure that prescription drugs are affordable so that families don't have to choose what medicines they can or cannot afford. I want every worker to receive a living wage. I firmly believe those investments will pay off exponentially in both the short and the long term for our families and for our communities. Center County is my home, and I want to make it a better place for all of us. And I am truly excited about taking my personal business and local government experience to Harrisburg and getting to work for everyone in this district. I thank you for your time, and I ask for your support on November 8th.
Justin, you have 90 seconds.
Over the 8,000 doors that I've done personally, people are struggling. I hear them talking about the inflation. I hear them talking about the food prices going higher and the gas prices and them traveling. Just in Snowshoe, listening to the individuals that tell me I have to travel 30 minutes away just to get to my employment. And then with the gas prices rising, how am I going to survive? Well, I'm telling you, we need to start looking at making serious decisions down in Harrisburg to help the people. I want to conclude today with a quote from President John F. Kennedy. He stated, "Let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democrat answer, but the right answer." I serve this country defending everyone's values, no matter what they are. As a social worker, I help those that came through my door, no matter what their background was, whether they were facing struggles, whether they needed to learn something to get back on track, or whether they just needed help with drug addiction or mental health. I will do the same if elected into the 82nd district. I will represent everyone. They say Harrisburg is a dark and negative place, but I want to shine some light down there. I don't need to go on Facebook and brag about the endorsements that I have, because I'm only seeking one endorsement, and that's your vote on November 8th.
Representative Conklin, you have 90 seconds.
I want to start by thanking the CDT for doing this. It's so important that if you're running for office, you must be accessible. You have to be there. And most of all, I want to thank the individuals in my life, the people, my wife. I mean, as a young kid, I never dreamed that I would be able to have a position like this. I've been married for 38 years to one of the most beautiful women in the world who's treated me and helped me in every way. I have a beautiful family. And I've been blessed so many ways with being a commissioner, with being a legislator. Early in my career, I often tell folks I was told I should know my place. See, I was the guy that fixed your toilet. I was the guy that went out and dug up the septic system or poured your concrete. I was told that, by many individuals who have a lot of money have never really taken to me. And I don't mean to make them mad, but they told me I needed to know my place. And I will tell you, after all these years, I know my place. My place is with that waitress that waits on you, or that waiter. My place is with the mechanic or the guy cutting your grass. My place is with the employer. My place is with those individuals that know what this is about, because not only have I been blessed, but I've been blessed to have one of the greatest staffs there are. We'll continue to work for everyone, whether you vote or don't vote or how you're affiliated, because this is your district, this is your state. And I've never forgotten that. I'm strictly a placeholder for my time here. And I want to make sure that we do the best we can. I'm asking for your support one more time. Please give us the opportunity to continue to serve each and every individual, not just in my district, but outside of my district as well.
Thank you all so much for participating, and thank you to everyone who is at home watching. 2 important dates to remember. The last day to register to vote in the upcoming election is October 24th, and Election Day is November 8th. Have a great evening.